80% of every soybean you lose at harvest never makes it into the combine. It falls off the front. And for 50 years, engineers in Wisconsin, Minnesota, Missouri, and North Dakota built machines to fix that. Machines almost nobody remembers now. A combine that changed into 5 different machines in half an hour. A cutterbar that floated over the dirt. A reel made of wind. 10 forgotten soybean harvesters, and every one of them was smarter than it looked. Number 10. The Oliver 525 and 535. Ask a farmer under 50 what an Oliver combine looks like, and you'll usually get a blank stare. Ask a farmer over 70, and you'll get a story. Oliver was one of the great American full-line companies, the direct corporate descendant of Hart Parr, which built the world's first successful production tractor at Charles City, Iowa in 1901. By the 1950s, Oliver was selling combines under the Grain Master name, and by the mid-1960s, the line had grown into the 500 series, the 525, the 535, then the 542 and 545. Here's the part most people don't know. By the time those machines were rolling off the line, Oliver wasn't really Oliver anymore. On November 1st, 1960, just days before John F. Kennedy was elected, the White Motor Corporation of Cleveland bought Oliver outright as a wholly owned subsidiary. In January 1962, White added Cockshut of Brantford, Ontario. In 1963, it added Minneapolis-Moline. 3 proud old brands, 1 owner, so the 500 series Olivers came out of a company that was quietly being absorbed. And that's exactly why they're forgotten. In 1969, White merged Oliver, Minneapolis-Moline, and Cockshut into a single outfit called White Farm Equipment. And by the mid-1970s, the individual brand colors were gone entirely. Green, red, and yellow all replaced by white silver. But the machines themselves were well liked, and the reason was scale. The 525 was a right-sized machine for the corn and soybean belt at exactly the moment that rotation was taking over the Midwest. It could run a 13-foot grain platform for beans, then swap to a 2-row corn head in the fall. You didn't need a wheat country Prairie machine to farm 300 acres in Illinois. You needed something that fit the field, fit the shed, and fit the loan. Farmers who kept them ran them for decades. There are still people who'll tell you the 525 separated beans as cleanly as anything that came after it. The brand died. The engineering didn't deserve to. Number 9. The Gleaner E and E3. If number 10 was forgotten because its brand vanished, number 9 is forgotten for the opposite reason. It was too small to brag about. The Gleaner E was built by the Gleaner Manufacturing Company while it was part of Allis-Chalmers out of the plant in Independence, Missouri. Production ran from 1962 to 1969, and in those 7 years they built roughly 17,300 of them. Under the sheet metal was a 226 cubic inch 4-cylinder gasoline engine making about 65 horsepower. 65. A modern combine's radiator fan probably takes more than that. And yet this machine is one of the great sleeper successes in soybean harvesting for 3 reasons. First, weight. Soybeans get cut low. You're running the sickle inches off the dirt. And soybean ground in October is frequently soft. A light machine floats where a heavy one buries itself and starts pushing mud into the header. Second, simplicity. Gleaner's whole design philosophy was a low, compact, silver-galvanized machine with an unusually short crop path. Fewer places to lose grain, fewer things to break at 11 at night when the dew is coming and you've got 40 acres left. Third, and this is the part that proves the engineering, the E's successor, the Gleaner K, replaced it in 1969 using the same basic architecture with a larger 250 cubic inch General Motors 6, and Allis-Chalmers kept building K models all the way to 1982. That's a 20-year run for a design concept. Here's the detail I love. Those little gleaners never actually went away. Agricultural researchers still use them today to harvest small test plots because unlike a modern combine, you can winch one onto a flatbed behind a heavy-duty pickup and haul it between research stations. A machine designed for a 1962 family farm is still collecting the yield data that breeds the soybean varieties you plant now. That's not nostalgia. That's a design that was simply right. Number 8. The Sperry New Holland TR70. In 1975, a combine appeared in Pennsylvania that looked wrong to everybody who saw it, and it changed the industry. New Holland had only been in the combine business since 1964, when the company bought the Belgian firm Clays, the outfit that had introduced its first self-propelled combine back in 1952. For a few years, New Holland just refined conventional machines. Then the engineers started asking an uncomfortable question. Why are we still beating grain out of the crop with a drum and then shaking the leftovers down a straw walker? The first development machine was a Clays 985 straw walker combine, rebuilt and put into corn in 1968 and wheat the year after. By 1969, an entirely new design was on test, and in 1975, the production machine arrived, the TR70 twin rotor. The first New Holland combine ever built in the United States. Instead of one transverse drum, the TR70 split the incoming crop into two streams and fed them into two counter-rotating longitudinal rotors, 17 inches in diameter, running against long concaves that threshed first, then separated. The rotors spun fast enough that centrifugal force flung most of the grain straight out through the concave. New Holland's own figures put the TR70 at 145 horsepower from a Ford engine, with a 5,550-liter grain tank, about 158 bushels. A 166 horsepower Caterpillar engine was on the option sheet. Now here's why this matters, specifically for soybeans. Soybeans thresh easily. You can rub them out of the pod with your hands. The problem has never been getting them out. The problem is getting them out without splitting them, because split and cracked beans get docked at the elevator and are worthless as seed. A conventional cylinder hits the crop hard and fast in one violent pass. The twin rotor spread that work out over a much longer, gentler path. Less impact damage, cleaner sample. The TR70 was only built through 1978 before the improved TR75 replaced it in 1979. It's the machine everybody skips over. But every twin rotor combine New Holland has built in the 50 years since traces directly back to it, and the company has now produced over 70,000 twin rotor machines worldwide. Number 7. The Gleaner N6. 2 years after the TR70, International Harvester launched the axial flow in the fall of 1977, and everybody in the industry realized rotary was the future. Most manufacturers responded by copying the layout, a long rotor running front to back. Gleaner did something else entirely. In February 1979, Allis-Chalmers went public with the N6, built at Independence, Missouri. It was a rotary combine, but the rotor was mounted transversely sideways across the machine, the same orientation as a conventional threshing cylinder. Gleaner called the system natural flow, and the whole argument was about gravity. Keep the crop moving down and across in the direction it already wants to go, instead of spiraling it the length of the machine. The N6 was joined within months by the smaller N5, and by the end of 1979, by the big N7, which became the largest capacity combine available in North America and held that position for years. But the piece of the N series that deserves the credit, and that almost nobody outside the Gleaner faithful can name, is the accelerator rolls. On a conventional combine, threshed grain drifts down onto the cleaning shoe more or less at whatever speed gravity gives it, mixed in with chaff. Gleaner's accelerator rolls grabbed that material and physically threw it downward at around 1,500 feet per minute. That did two things. It spread the material into a thin, even curtain instead of a clump, and a thin curtain is far easier for the cleaning fan to blow the chaff out of. And it pre-cleaned the grain in mid-air before it ever touched a sieve. There was a bonus that mattered enormously to anyone farming rolling ground in Iowa, Missouri, or southern Illinois, because the grain was being thrown rather than dropped. The machine didn't pile everything onto the downhill side of the shoe when you were working a side slope. Other manufacturers solved hillside grain loss with expensive self-leveling mechanisms. Gleaner solved a good chunk of it with two rollers and some physics. The N6 carried roughly a 200-bushel tank and could run headers up to 30 feet. For a machine launched in 1979, that was serious capacity, and the transverse rotor idea was genuinely original, not a copy of anybody. Number 6. The Crary Air Reel. Number 6 isn't a combine. It's a reel, and it might be the single most quietly clever thing on this list. Start with the fact that opened this video because it's the whole reason this device exists. Michigan State University Extension research puts it plainly, roughly 80% of soybean harvest loss happens at the header, not in the rotor, not over the sieves, at the front of the machine before the crop ever gets inside. Other extension work has put the figure as high as 85 or even 90%. Think about what's actually happening out there. A soybean plant is a dry, brittle stick loaded with pods that are trying very hard to pop open. You cut it 3 inches off the ground. Now that cut plant has to travel backwards across the platform to the auger. Beat it with a steel reel and pods shatter. Don't beat it enough, and it lies on the cutter bar, bunches up, and gets pushed along the ground. Crary Industries of West Fargo, North Dakota, answered that with air. The company's origins are pure Northern Plains workshop. Reinhold Delzer founded the Delzer Machine Shop building combine attachments for sunflower harvest. In 1979, Chuck and Joe Crary, an accountant and a real estate broker, neither with any manufacturing experience, bought the business. Around 1981, they shortened the name to Crary Company and expanded the line with cutting attachments and high-pressure fans. Those fans became the air reel. It replaces the factory reel entirely and puts a continuous curtain of high-velocity air over 200 miles an hour directly onto the cutterbar. The crop isn't dragged back. It's blown back onto the auger or the draper belt by something that has no hard edges and can't shatter a pod. Does it work? The Prairie Agricultural Machinery Institute ran field-scale trials in Manitoba in 2016 and 2017, comparing 35-foot auger and draper headers with and without air systems across 80 plots. In 2017, the air systems cut header losses by 38%, about 1.1 bushels per acre. Crary's own claim is 1 to 4 bushels per acre. A reel made of wind, invented in a shed in North Dakota, still sold today. Number 5. The John Deere, number 45. By the mid-1950s, John Deere had a problem, and it was a problem of its own making. Deere's first production self-propelled combine, the number 55, launched in 1947, a machine with a 30-inch cylinder, a 45-bushel tank, and a 6-cylinder Hercules engine, making about 45 horsepower. It was a success. It was also too much machine and too much money for an enormous number of Midwestern farms. Deere engineers had actually tried to build something smaller during the war years and shelved it. The idea sat until 1954, when the Model 45 was introduced. The 45 was Deere's small self-propelled combine, and it was aimed squarely at the farm that was in the middle of one of the great agronomic shifts of the 20th century, the corn and soybean rotation spreading across the Corn Belt. It came with a 10-foot grain platform and a variable speed drive that let the operator change ground speed without shifting gears, which matters more than it sounds like it does when you're trying to hold a steady feed rate through a thin patch of beans. Then came the piece that made it historic. Deere introduced the number 10 corn attachment for the Model 45, a 2-row snapping unit that let the same combine shell corn. Stop and think about what that meant. Before this, corn came off with a picker and went to a commercial sheller. Now one machine on one farm harvested soybeans in dry, sunny weather and corn in weather too poor for beans, and shelled and cleaned the corn on the spot. Field losses dropped, storage requirements dropped. The commercial sheller was cut out altogether. The American Society of Agricultural Engineers recognized the number 10 corn head with its historic landmark award in 1999 for furthering agricultural engineering in North America. The 45 went on to become Deere's best-selling self-propelled combine of its era. It is also today almost entirely forgotten, overshadowed by the 55 that came before it and the new generation 4400 and 6600 that came after. It shouldn't be. The 45 is the machine that made the corn-soybean farm mechanically possible for the average family operation. Number 4. The bolt-on floating cutterbar. Number 4 has no brand name, no paint scheme, and no model number. It's an idea, and it was retrofitted onto thousands of combines by farmers who were tired of leaving money in the field. The problem is simple and brutal. Soybeans set their lowest pods just a few inches off the ground. Cut at 6 inches and you leave pods on the stubble. Cut at 2 inches and the first ridge, dead furrow, or rock you hit destroys your sickle. And a combine header is a rigid steel beam 12, 15, 20 feet wide, which means it can only ever be at the right height at one point across its width. Everywhere else it's too high or too low. The answer was to stop treating the cutterbar as part of the rigid header at all. Let it float. Mount it on spring-loaded arms so it can move vertically independently, riding the actual contour of the dirt underneath it rather than the average height of the whole machine. In the 1960s and 1970s, this became one of the busiest corners of agricultural patenting in America. The U.S. patent record from that period reads like a roll call. Fuller, May, Hinneke, Quick, inventor after inventor filing floating and flexible cutterbar designs through the early and mid-1970s, plus earlier add-on floating cutterbar patents from the late 1960s. Some were factory options. Many were aftermarket kits you bolted onto whatever combine you already owned. The results are documented, and they are enormous. According to University of Georgia Extension material, attachments including the floating cutterbar and the pickup reel brought soybean harvesting losses down to 7 or 8%. A patent filing from the period bluntly noted that combines were leaving behind about 10% of the soybean crop, and that the floating cutterbar was recognized as substantially reducing that. Cutting your harvest loss by a fifth or a quarter on a machine you already own with a bolt-on kit on a 200-acre bean field that's real money every single year. Every flex head running in North America today is the direct descendant of those spring-loaded arms. Number 3. The John Deere low-profile row crop header. If the floating cutterbar was the good answer, number 3 was the better one. And it's the entry on this list with the most surprising fate because the industry eventually decided it wasn't worth it. In 1974, John Deere introduced a low-profile row crop header built specifically for soybeans. The logic was different from a flex head. A flex head accepts the fundamental problem that you're cutting a wide swath of crop that isn't where you left it and tries to manage it. A row crop head refuses the problem. If the beans were planted in rows and you know exactly where those rows are, then don't build a wide cutting bar at all. Build gathering units that run between the rows, pick up each row individually, and cut it right at the base with the header sitting low and tight to the plants. No wide sickle skimming the ground. No pods hanging below the cut line across a 20-foot span. Each row handled on its own terms. The numbers were remarkable. Against the 7 to 8% losses achieved with floating cutterbars and pickup reels, University of Georgia Extension material reports harvesting losses could be cut to about 4% with these new headers. That is roughly halving your header loss again. So why is it forgotten? Because agronomy moved. Row crop heads only work if the crop is genuinely in predictable rows at a spacing the head is built for. Through the 1980s and 1990s, soybean growers moved steadily toward narrow rows, 15-inch rows, twin rows, and drilled beans because narrower spacing closes the canopy faster, shades out weeds, and lifts yield. A row crop head can't cope with a drilled field. It doesn't have rows to follow. The industry answered instead by making flex heads wider, more flexible and better controlled, and eventually by moving to flexible draper heads. The row crop bean head faded out, but it was never wrong. On 30-inch rows, with a competent operator, it did something no flex head of its era could do. It's a genuinely brilliant piece of engineering that lost to a change in how people planted, not to a change in how well it worked. Number 2. The Allis-Chalmers All-Crop 66 and 72. Number 2 is the machine that put soybeans in the combine in the first place. The Allis-Chalmers All-Crop story starts in 1935 with a pull-type PTO-driven rubber-tired combine originally called the High Speed, renamed All-Crop the following year. The first ones had a 60-inch sickle and cylinder and an 18-bushel bin. The Model 66 got a 66-inch cut, and these machines carried straight on through the 1950s and into the early 1960s, which is why they belong on this list. By the time the Model 72 replaced the 66 in 1960, Allis-Chalmers had built roughly 300,000 all-crop harvesters. 300,000 from one pull-type combine line. Here's what made it work for soybeans specifically. And it is a beautifully counterintuitive piece of design. The All-Crop's threshing cylinder didn't use conventional steel rasp bars. It used rubber-faced cylinder bars running against a rubber concave. That sounds like a weakness. It's the opposite. Soybeans are trivially easy to thresh and very easy to damage. Split a bean and you've ruined it. A soft, gentle rubber-on-rubber threshing action gets the beans out of the pod without cracking them. The same feature made the All-Crop legendary on some of the most delicate crops in North American agriculture: red clover seed, timothy, alfalfa, grass seed. The operator's manual listed dozens upon dozens of crops the machine would handle. Allis-Chalmers marketed the All-Crop as the machine that brought direct combining of soybeans, grasses, and legume seeds to the family farm, and as the machine that eliminated the big threshing crew you had to feed at harvest. That's marketing copy. But it's marketing copy that 300,000 sales tend to back up. It wasn't magic. Farmers who ran them will tell you the All-Crop struggled in soybeans if the field was weedy, and that pushing a heavy 10-foot swath through the 90-degree turn in the crop path took patience. But it needed only about 30 horsepower on the drawbar. Any small tractor could pull it. That's the real achievement. It made soybean harvesting affordable for a farm that could never have bought a self-propelled machine. It democratized the crop. Number 1. The Minneapolis-Moline Uni-Harvestor. And number 1 is the most ambitious idea on this entire list. A machine that tried to solve a problem the industry still hasn't really solved. In 1951, Minneapolis-Moline began building something at its plant in Hopkins, Minnesota called the Uni-System. Some people called it the Uni-Farmer. Skeptics called it the motorcycle because that's what the bare power unit looked like sitting in the yard. A single-driven axle, an engine, and an operator's station with nothing on the front. The nothing on the front was the whole point. Minneapolis-Moline's pitch was that this was 5 machines in one self-propelled power unit, and a set of interchangeable harvesting attachments that bolted onto it. A forage harvester, a windrower, a corn picker sheller, a corn husker, and the Uni-Harvestor, which turned it into a self-propelled combine. The advertising claimed you could change from one machine to another in under 30 minutes, and the line that best captures what they were selling: husk corn in the morning and combine soybeans the same afternoon with the same tractor. Now think about the economics of that in 1951 on a diversified Midwestern farm running corn, soybeans, small grain, and livestock. The alternative was to buy a combine that sat idle 11 months a year, a forage harvester that sat idle 11 months a year, and a corn picker that sat idle 11 months a year. Each one a separate loan, a separate engine, a separate set of drives, a separate spot in a shed you probably didn't have. The Uni-System said, buy one engine, one drivetrain, one operator's platform. Buy attachments for the rest. Minneapolis-Moline built it at Hopkins until 1962. And then something unusual happened. The idea outlived the company that created it. White Motor absorbed Minneapolis-Moline in 1963, and the Uni-System passed a new idea which kept developing it for roughly 2 more decades. The 700 series ran through models 701 to 707, some with Continental engines, some with Ford, some with Perkins diesels. The 800 series followed, with machines like the 802 of 1981 running a 717 combine unit and an 815 grain head, and later units powered by Cummins 5.9 diesels. 30 years of production for a concept everybody supposedly rejected. So why did it lose? The people who ran them are honest about it. A Uni-System did 5 jobs pretty well. It did not do any single one of them better than a machine built to do only that. And as farms consolidated through the 1970s and 1980s, the calculation flipped. If corn and soybeans are the only 2 things you grow, and you're growing 2,000 acres of them, you don't want a machine that's good at 5 things. You want a machine that's exceptional at 2. Meanwhile, making the Uni bigger meant heavier framing, 4-wheel drive, and rising cost. And new idea didn't have the sales volume to keep pace with the refinement the big manufacturers were pouring into dedicated combines. But look at what that machine understood in 1951. It understood that the expensive part of a harvester is the engine, the drivetrain, and the cab. and that the part which actually does the harvesting is comparatively cheap and crop-specific. It understood that a farm's capital is better spent on one good power platform than 4 idle ones. That is a genuinely brilliant idea. It was 70 years early, and it lost to economics rather than to engineering. And that, more than anything, is what these 10 machines have in common. Which one surprised you most? And which forgotten machine did I miss? Tell me in the comments. I read them, and a few of these came from you.